Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the monthly meeting of the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, and I ask that you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first order of business is approval of today's agenda.
I'll move approval of the agenda.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. A report out on closed session. Council?
The board met in closed session this morning to confer with its real property negotiator under closed session agenda item 1. No action was taken in closed session. Action may be taken in open session under agenda item 8. The board also met with legal counsel regarding existing litigation in the case of Baxter versus WSAFCA. No action was taken. And finally, conferred with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation under agenda item 3 in the closed session agenda, and action may be taken on that matter under open agenda item 7.
Thank you. Item 3, public comment on matters not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, approval of our September 21st meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion that we approve them.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, review of monthly and year-to-date revenue and expenses.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This report summarizes the agency's cash position for the month of August 2017. For August, the agency's starting position was approximately $9.5 million in funds 870 and 871. No appreciable revenue was received. Expenses totaled $1.7 million between administration and capital cost. Most of the activity was related to work on the Southport Levee Improvement Project at $1.7 million. The agency's ending position for August was $7.8 million in Fund 870 and 871. Combined with the advance funding that's parked in Fund 257, the agency's cash position was approximately $34 million for the month of August. As of 10/10, the agency's cash position, combined cash position, was approximately $29.3 million, reflecting the ongoing activity with the Southport Levee Improvement Project. And then in future reports, you'll start to see we're starting to take down the advance payments and move them into Fund 871. I think just recently we moved another 5.3. That won't be reflected in this report, but in a future report. We're currently finishing the annual audit report. The auditors are on site, and that's going actually really well all across the board. And because of the audit and a couple other issues, finance will bring the budget update report to the board next month rather than today because of the audit and some other issues that they had to take care of. And that is the end of the report for August.
Okay, thank you very much. Any comments or questions? Nope. Very good. We look forward to the November presentation.
Okay, thanks.
Item, the consent agenda, which includes one item, item 6. Any comments on the consent agenda? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move consent.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to move the consent agenda. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, Public hearing and consideration of Resolution 1710-02, authorizing an eminent domain action to acquire real property.
Good morning, President Ramos, members of the WSAFCA Board. Today I'm presenting a resolution of necessity for the Southport Levee Improvement Project for your consideration. This is a cleanup measure for a small piece of property. I'm going to discuss the goals for the Southport project and then present the information on the required findings for a resolution of necessity. As you know, first and foremost, the Southport Improvement Project is a public safety project. The objectives are to protect the safety and public health of residents in the community while minimizing impacts to the community as much as possible. To select the least cost-effective, the least cost alternative that achieves the greatest public benefit and complies with federal and state regulations. And our overall goal is to provide 200-year flood protection to the city and its residents with the least amount of harm to private property owners. In 2008, a problem identification report was completed and identified under seepage, through seepage, and geometry stabilization deficiencies throughout the West Sacramento levee system. The Southport Reach was selected in 2010 to address a number of these deficiencies identified in the PIR, the Problem Identification Report. Between 2010 and 2013, a number of design alternatives were evaluated and brought before the board for consideration prior to the final publication of the project's final EIR and EIS. 5 distinct project alternatives were evaluated, and ultimately the board chose a combination of measures that include fix-in-place improvements at both ends of the project and approximately 4 miles of setback levee from north of Linden Road, behind Bees Lake, and continuing south where South River Road turns west towards Gregory. A resolution of necessity is needed to initiate condemnation because this property is needed for the project and the owners on title are either deceased, unknown, except for one potential heir that has been notified, Mr. Jones. To pass a resolution of necessity, the board must make 4 findings. 4 findings include that the public interest and necessity for the proposed project, the project is planned and located in a manner that is most compatible and with the greatest good and the least private injury, that the property is necessary for the project, and that the offer has been made to the owner of record. As we've said as I said here many days before, the Southport Early Implementation Project is a 5.8-mile levee improvement project and includes a number of combination of fixes. It's designed to address known deficiencies in the Southport Reach. It's designed to meet 200-year flood protection, meeting state and federal standards. It will protect over 25,000 people and protect $4 billion in community assets. Secondarily, the proposed project is planned or located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. The project, as you know, is located along the west bank of the Sacramento River. There's been significant erosion along this area of the riverbank. Levee deficiencies include seepage, slope stability, and geometry, in addition to erosion. And the project team evaluated numerous design solutions to achieve 200-year protection for the city at this location. Design selection was deliberate and considered public safety, engineering requirements, and constraints, project borrow needs, habitat mitigation requirements, impacts to private property, community fiscal effects, as well as the agency's ability to provide the greatest benefits with the existing resources. The property is necessary for the project. So the size of this project, the property is 0.12 acres. So this is less than 1/4 of an acre. The entire property is needed for the project. It is located immediately south of the former Aranyakasam parcel and adjacent to where Buck Rogers also had a property. Lastly, the last finding that we need to make is that the offer has been made to the owner of record. As I previously stated, we've been unable to locate the immediate owners that are on title. The board approved just compensation for the proposed acquisition support of the project in July of 2015. A written offer was produced and mailed to the last owner of record, and we've made numerous attempts to try to find offspring heirs to the property. But in accordance with Government Code 7267.2, the written offer was mailed at the last known address. That concludes my presentation. I ask that you open the public hearing and accept any questions or comments.
Thank you, Paul. With that, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this matter? Seeing and hearing none, I will close the public hearing, and I will ask the board if they have any questions or comments, and/or would entertain a motion
I'll make a motion, we accept the approval.
based on the findings that were presented by
Yes.
staff. It's been first and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion and resolution carries. Thank you, Paul. Item 8, consideration of Resolution 171001 regarding acquisition of real property rights.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. 17-10-01 seeks authority to initiate acquisition of a portion of the rights underlying the Clarksburg Branch Trail. WSAFCA constructed Village Parkway as part of the Sacramento Levee Improvement Project, and Village Parkway crosses the Clarksburg Branch line down towards Gregory Avenue. The city acquired the Clarksburg Branch line in 2005 under the Rails to Trails Act. The corridor consists of, is 100 feet wide. The east 50 feet is in fee, and the west 50 feet is in easement. The easement portion belongs to owners possibly known, possibly unknown. Under the Rails to Trails Act, there's provisions for recreational uses, but it doesn't include all public uses. So to have the full set of rights, the fee rights to have Village Parkway in that location, staff needs to acquire the rights on behalf of the board. And we expect it to be mostly an administrative action. We don't know who the owners are at this point. We suspect they're members or successors in interest to the Glide Estate and others. So with that, we'll go, if the resolution is approved by the board, we'll start initial research to nail down who the owners may be, and then I suspect we'll be returning to the board at some future date to consider a resolution of a necessity to acquire the rights from persons known and unknown. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Is there any discussion amongst the board, or questions, additional questions? Hearing none, I would make the motion that we approve Resolution 17-10-01 concerning the acquisition of real property interests.
I'll second it.
It's been first and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 9, Southport project update. Mr. Ken. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, President Ramos, members of the board. I'm here to provide the latest update on the Southport levee construction project. And here we go. That's one of our newer pictures we have up there. We had some evening work done during some of the slurry wall operations to keep pace with the construction schedule. This is a shot of the slurry ponds we used in the vicinity of Davis Road. And there you have the long stick excavator in the back. That's part of the deep wall operations that were completed not too long ago. All right, so I'll start from the top. Over the last 30 days, we've completed some additional clearing, grubbing, disking, and subgrade preparation in segments B2 and F. That's the very northern and southernmost areas of the setback levee. All the other areas in the setback levee were already done, so we're just continuing to finish that up. Demolition work, since most of the structures have been removed, we're working on underground facilities, irrigation pipes, septic tanks, well abandonment, stuff like that. Bar 1 operations and ramp construction are ongoing. Those should be wrapped up end of this month, so we'll be out of there by November 1st, and we're looking to be on schedule for that. We have various culvert installations. Some of them recently completed. We're in borrow one, but we still have some stuff along the Village Parkway route that we're going to continue to install as time permits, kind of during the late fall, early winter, as long as conditions allow us to. We also completed utility relocation. The last segment was at the very south end of the city for the South River Road realignment work, which is currently ongoing. So the last piece to this puzzle will wind up being the utility connections to the new cell tower just south of Linden Road. That'll likely happen beginning of next year, but as for now, everything's completely out of the way for the Southport project in regards to utilities. Upcoming work, so now that we're entering October, November, we're getting to the point where we're starting to monitor the weather a lot more closely. River levels have still been fairly low, so we haven't had to worry about those. But some of the upcoming work includes the setback slurry wall construction, the setback levee. Currently, we've got 7,500 lineal foot done. We've got the entire deep wall section in and working on the shallower wall. Deeper wall was about 67 foot deep. The shallower wall is about 27 foot deep, just to give you a perspective on that. We're working south of the Oak Hall Bend area at this time and on schedule for the second week in November, first or second week in November, to be completed with the slurry wall all the way down to segment B2, which is the southern limits of the setback levee. We're continuing with setback levee embankment fill. We've got 9,500 feet currently of levee foundation built, working on the last 3,200 foot in the south end. So that's in the B2 area primarily, with some additional work kind of going on the north end. The north end, we've got about 6,700 foot that we need to get done to complete the setback levee foundation. Like I said, some work has already started in that area. We'll see how long weather and soil conditions allow us to keep moving forward with that. So we'll continue to monitor that, and I'll give you updates as we get further into November, and we'll see what December allows us to do. Continued borrow site preparation and harvesting. So I mentioned borrow one, we're going to be done with that by the end of this month. We'll continue to work in A4 and A1, which are the northern and southernmost borrow areas. We also have stockpiles located throughout the project area for our type 2 clay material. So if you were to take a drive out there and see all these stockpile locations, that's what's there for. So we'll continue to go ahead and use that material as long as we can continue to build levee embankment. And as we get closer to winterizing the project, we'll have some soil stabilization and some other things to make sure we're compliant with our sweepy and other erosion and sediment control requirements. We're continuing to do offset area explorations. That's just kind of mapping out the soil types that are within the offset area, which we hope to get to next year. So that'll help and aid with the limits of the excavations that will allow going into next year. Borrow one restoration, I mentioned before. Existing levee cleanup. We currently have crews going along the existing levee, making sure any debris, any type of excavations or scarification along the levee embankments, the existing levee embankments, are restored prior to November 1st. We're working with RD 900 to make sure that's done and completed. We've got a punch list we're currently putting together, and we'll use that as our guide to make sure we're compliant with everything. Biological surveys, cultural coordination, that's ongoing. At this point, the only thing we're really keeping an eye on right now is GGS and making sure we're compliant with the permits. Nesting birds aren't an issue this time of year. And then cultural coordination with the tribes, just making sure everybody's in the loop on what's going moving forward. And as we get close to wrapping up, just making sure everybody's on the same page where we're going to be at the end of this year and then where we're going to be next year. So a lot of conversations and meetings going on during this winter to make sure we're prepared for next year. Like I mentioned, the punch list we have going on. Part of that is for borrow one and completing that work, also the winterization. So we'll go ahead and continue with that to make sure we're in compliance with everything by the end of this year. In addition to the setback levee embankment fill going along the setback levee, we're also working on the embankment fill for the entrances to the Sherwood and Yacht Club marinas. So that's another element that's ongoing as well. Going on to the pictures, I've got a couple pictures here of the embankment work that's going on both in the south and the north end. The top picture is I believe, the north end of the project with some of the housing developments in the background. We've started some of the work up there, but it's primarily been focused on the south end to make sure we get that wall in all the way to the southern limits. And on the bottom picture, we've got some of the embankment work that's going on towards the south end of the project. You'll see the cell tower on the back right-hand side. That's adjacent to the A1 borrow location towards the southern limits of the setback levee. These are some pictures we got for the setback, the slurry wall installation. This is in the deep section. You got Sky High, a consultant of ours, doing some aerial photos. So that's why you got the perspectives you see right here. Like I said, we did do some night work essentially worked from 6:30 till 10 o'clock for a portion of it to make sure we were getting back on schedule. So these are some of those shots. This is the 67-foot deep wall. Like I said, currently we're doing 27-foot deep. Right now, the slurry wall operations are going on a 12-hour shift, so starting at 6:30, going to about 7 o'clock. In borrow one, getting ready to wrap things up. As you'll see in the top left-hand corner, that's the actual borrow pond area that we've been using. That'll go ahead and remain as is, essentially a 4-foot deep pond in that back section will remain. And the picture you see on the bottom right-hand side is one of the culvert installations. We have a couple outfall culverts that go to the adjacent ditches. So that's what that is. And in that top picture, you can see a portion of the wire ramp. I didn't have a picture for the whole thing, but we were looking to complete that AB next week and then paving the first week of November. A couple additional pictures we have of the borrow site and harvesting. The top picture is essentially the entire north offset area. So we've got the north setback levee tie-in there to the far left, and on the right-hand side as you approach the north end of Bees Lake. So that's kind of our footprint in the north offset area, which is has some work started, but we'll continue to go as far as we can, getting into the rest of the construction season. And then we have borrow sites A4 and A3 in the photo on the bottom. To give you perspective, Davis Road is about where the drone is taking the photo, so that's looking south. And that's what I've got. Any questions?
Go ahead.
Thanks for the update. So the extended hours, they've brought us back, or they brought the project back on track, or getting close, or?
Getting closer. Like I said, the setback levee embankment fill is really where the critical path item is, and they've caught up some, but they're still, I want to say, at least a month and a half behind in regards to the actual schedule. Like I said, if we can go ahead and go into November, December, and get some of that setback levee work done so we can get the north portion done, that'll allow us to possibly get some slurry wall in prior to the end of this construction season, but it's looking less and less likely. But like I said, it's a goal we're shooting for. There's a lot of discussions and a lot of coordination that are going to have to happen over this next winter to make sure they have the resources as well as the ability to get into some of these areas, because before anything's done to the existing levee, we need to make sure that the new levee improvements are in place. So no going into the offset grading area, no levee degrade, none of the existing levee is going to be compromised before the new levee's in place, or the new portion of levee we have associated with it. So still a lot of work in front of us.
Have we received any comments from the community about I know everyone was notified in the surrounding area about the extension of hours. Are people, community members, have we been hearing anything more about the time of construction?
One of the borrow operations, we got some complaints on that. We winded up ceasing operations in that area due to light and noise. But everything else has been coordinated with the levee wall construction in particular, with the extended hours, with the adjacent property owners, and no complaints that I've heard of. Street sweeping we continue to do as we go ahead and had haul activities along Linden Road, pieces of dirt that would come off the trucks, getting phone calls on that. We've got the southern city limits currently narrowed down to one lane to get that South Road River alignment. I've got a gas line, a 30-inch sewer line, as well as concrete roadway underneath that existing road. So we had a previous closure to deal with the gas line. We'll have an upcoming one to deal with the concrete roadway and how we deal with that. And then ultimately for paving, we're hoping to do a nighttime closure. That way we minimize the amount of disruption to the public, but temperatures during that time of the year are what we're going to have to really look at. So if we can go ahead and do that work, great, but if not, we'll have to push it to the daytime. But, the public's actually been really responsive to this. We've had folks talking to everybody out there as far as, hey, what's going on? What are you guys doing? And we've got pretty positive feedback from a lot of those folks. But we realize it's a construction project. There's going to be impacts, and we appreciate people working with us. But trying to do everything we can to make sure we impact them as little as possible.
And my last question about some of the project photos are, I think if you're getting questions from the public, like, this is the project, I should know the answer before I ask the question, but are we posting some of the kind of updates on a website?
Yeah, so we have a
Anywhere?
Flickr.
Okay.
We have a Flickr website that's got a monthly kind of log
So
of
these photos would be there, some of these photos would be there,
Some of these
okay.
photos would be on there. I think I've got all the way up through last month. I don't have October up yet. But yeah, we go ahead and incorporate all the photos I take on the ground, as well as these aerial photos. The aerial photos just give it a really big perspective, especially, like I said, based on the nighttime shots and everything else. So that kind of shows people kind of the overall project. The photos I take are during the day, so you see some more of the action shots with the material and the equipment.
The reason why I asked too is I had a parent who said, gosh, it would be really great for all the West Sacramento children to understand this project because it's protecting them. And then, of course, I'm thinking of you trying to manage the project and then having busloads of school kids. So I was trying to figure out, it's like, well, we have these photos and the story and we're following it and we can tell the whole story about this levee project through photos and other ways. But there is a huge interest because obviously this is top priority for us is to have this project completed and, have the best, highest level of flood protection we can. So there's just a huge amount of interest, and thanks for your work.
Yeah, and if there's anybody in particular that wants to contact us, teachers or whatnot, feel
Okay.
free, and we can go ahead and give them kind of a summary and provide photos, and if we have time, why not? I've already given probably at least 10-plus tours of the
Okay.
site to various folks, so
Okay.
we don't have an issue. Of course, it is a construction site, so
Right.
there's issues involved with having kids running around over there, but
Right.
like I said, we can accommodate any request,
Okay.
and like I said, we're pretty available for that.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
That's it.
That's it. Well, just a couple comments. The question of how far you get this year and how critical that is to be able to access the current levees next year sounds critical, and, and they'll be working on that over the winter to ensure that, I guess we have a timeline that can ensure that the new levees will be in place in order to access start working on the old levees, right?
Yeah, so there's,
Yeah.
there's the current production rates and everything else we've gotten from them based on this year's construction. So extrapolating that into what we're doing next year, what resources are going to be available, additional pan scrapers, additional compaction, additional operators, and just making sure that the schedule we have moving forward is as realistic as possible.
Very
It's
good.
construction, you run into things all the time, but we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence.
Well, it's never good to wish for no rain in California, so let's wish for normal rain this year, and hopefully we can keep the schedule up. So,
That'd be nice.
thanks, Ken.
All right, thank you.
WSAFCA project updates.
Sure, just a few updates for the board. We did submit a real estate reimbursement. We're anticipated that we will receive a wire next week for about $1.5 million as part of the reimbursement process. 2 segments of the land net completed by Mark Thomas and Company has now been submitted to DWR Cadastral for them to review, and hopefully that will facilitate our reimbursement process. In terms of the Time Oil site, it's TOC, the Time Oil Company is still in bankruptcy. We received a notice this past week that they're liquidating one of their property assets for about $230,000. That's only represents about 1/3 of our claim. So we're still waiting to see how that plays out. I'll give you periodic updates as they become available. Utility relocation, including AT&T, is substantially complete for the entire project. This week, we received a funds request from the Army Corps of Engineers for $30,000 to continue to move forward with a revised economic evaluation of the West Slip. We've been working closely with the Sacramento Division staff. They've been really receptive to working with us, and that's also been facilitated with the mayor and the city manager's visit back to Washington, D.C. earlier this month or last month. And so we anticipate that will happen. Greg worked with consultants and staff to come up with a new project description, which was received favorably from the Army Corps of Engineers. So things are looking good for trying to get a revised benefit cost ratio. I don't have anything to report as of yet, but certainly we've been working very collaboratively to try to make that happen. And lastly, we are in flood preparedness month. So on October 25th, we will have another public relations event at the Stonegate Elementary School. Mayor Pro Tem Mark Johannesson will be the speaker to introduce the event. There'll be speakers from the Army Corps of Engineers, and DWR will also bring their flood simulation model for the students, the third grade students. And then we'll report back out after that's completed, but you should see something, there should be a press release coming out next week, probably. And that concludes my report on updated activities for West Levee.
Okay, very, very good. Any questions?
I was just going to have an addition. I was at the Greater Sacramento had a press conference yesterday for the Amazon headquarters, and I happened to see Congresswoman Matsui, and it's on her mind, trying to help us navigate with the BCR. She actually said it out loud to me, kind of, as soon as she saw me, that's what she thought of. So that was good, I thought. I mean, we need all hands on deck for this. And having the attached report from Holland and Knight and to see the activities, it probably would be helpful, although I know that it has to be navigated with everyone. Probably getting some kind of, I don't know if it's bi-monthly or quarterly, I think having an update about the activities in this regard at the federal level, I think would be helpful for us. So even if it's a memo that's coming in like this is an action plan and follow-up, but then what? And then what's next? So I think just so we're on top of it, I just think that would be helpful. So I don't know, is it okay to request that from
Absolutely.
you? Okay, perfect.
Yeah. We'll bring it back, and I'll let Greg know when he gets back too. So whatever activities we have ongoing, you can be apprised about what progress we're making.
And we get those, but I just think with regard to actually back there, all these meetings, is there movement, and are we, I don't know, is that?
Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
we've been advocating that for a long time. And we do get, as part of our regular update, what is transpiring back there. But this is a good report, fairly thorough with the action items and stuff in, which I think you've mentioned that Greg and the consultants have jumped on and have answered back to the Corps. And I appreciate the mayor and city manager's time back there, advocating the whole community's needs and whatnot. And I think we got good feedback from them on how to proceed in order to get, the first step is the PED money. And we just got to continue to press our case, and it looks like we are. So I'm appreciative of everybody's efforts to do that.
Yeah, keep marching forward. Thanks.
Yep. Bill, do you have anything else?
You got an A for me.
Okay, very, very, very good. Is that it, Paul? Okay, well, thank you. Before we adjourn, I just want to make one comment. We have a fellow colleague, Bill Christoph, that is having some health difficulties this time, and I just want to recognize that and tell him that he's in our thoughts and prayers, and we wish him well. So with that, we'll adjourn.